Hello, everyone, and welcome to another week. I'm Doug Zanger, editor-in-chief, Indie Agency News. I'm just doing some adjusting here. You see these headphones I have on right now? We're going to call this hashtag ad product placement, courtesy of our good friend Robert Douglas at Left Off Madison, a great Indie Agency News member. These are the Technics A800. Probably the best headphones I've ever owned. Well, or been given. They are phenomenal, fantastic. So, we're going to be giving these away. We're going to be giving a pair away, at least a few pairs away during Cannes. So that's code for yes, I will be in Cannes. We're going to have more details on that coming up. Thank you to all of our members, Indie Agency News members. We are at 85. Thank you for your support. Thank you for supporting the mission. The brief here is building the global home for independent agencies. The mission: serve independent agencies and the brilliant people behind them. The goal: more visibility for indie agencies, more choice for marketers. Go to indieagency.news to learn more. Coming up tomorrow, Meet an Indie Agency, always on Wednesdays. Movetic out of San Diego. And then on Thursday, we go to Boise to learn about Freak Fort. There's a festival there called Tree Fort. And our friends at Drake Cooper did an AI experience around that. So we're going to talk about that in Indie Work. And then on Friday, it's always about fun and games. Random Q, if you want to be a contestant, go to indieagency.news and reach out to us. We are on the hunt for a contestant and a judge that day. So please reach out. But today, Tuesdays are always about indie thinking. And the question is, what is indie thinking, Doug? Well, it can be anything. If you're an agency, you have some new research, maybe you have an op-ed you want to share and you want to do it live. We've done that a couple of times. Or you have a point of view about things. And that brings us to our guests today, Nora and Eric from Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Nora's in Pittsburgh. Eric's down in Atlanta. Thank you for your support of Indie Agency News. And today we are talking about when the network runs dry. So, Nora and Eric, let's go ahead and start with a brief introduction into Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Give us the quick thumbnail.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So Nora and I each individually have about 15 years of experience being in or around agencies. I led growth in an agency for about 6 years and then consulted into agencies for about 9 years after that, into about 200 so agencies. Nora was inside the agency walls and driving growth for several agencies. A couple of those she had some really dramatic performance for. Two of those she was able to lead through a scale to sale model. And then we got off and started doing our own things. And what we really saw was agencies running into consistent growth challenges. And we just felt like there was a better way to approach it, a way that was more authentic to agencies versus everybody thinking there was this one silver bullet or one thing that every agency had to do. And unfortunately it's not that easy. And we really saw a better way to support agencies in their growth. And so that's why we founded Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And, Nora wrote the line, "You've worked too hard for it to be this hard." And I think a lot of agency owners really empathize with that. It's like, hey, we're good at this thing. We love what we do, but dang, this is hard. And we think a lot of that's because of the pipeline. We've all been in and around agencies. We know that clients are challenging, but that's table stakes. That's not the reason why people get burnt out is because the clients are difficult. It's because they don't have the right clients to work on, or they're consistently faced with revenue related challenges.
Right. Well, revenue makes the world go round and makes agencies grow. And the broad topic today is around when that particular field starts to get fallow. So Nora, going over to you on this. I mean, there's never a right or wrong time to start or stop thinking about revenue. It's consistent. But what are some of the early signals that an agency might see that you would consider a red flag heading towards this idea of like, oh God, everything's drying up? What's that? What are one or two signals of, hey, we really got to be paying attention to this and get ahead of it quick?
Yeah, that's a great question, Zanger. I think, one is how much are you pitching or having conversations? Because a lot of agencies we talk to are like, we don't pitch. And I think there's been a big movement in our industry, especially among indies, not to pitch, not to RFP. And we support that for sure. So if not a pitch, though, a conversation. How many conversations are you having per week, per month? Is that part of it feeling dry? Like if there's no new conversations, no new people entering your network, like we talk about the network running dry, the network always has to be expanding. So if you've hit a point where like you're not able to expand your network or you aren't prioritizing the expansion of it, then that's something where it's kind of a red flag to say, hey, we need to get more awareness, more eyeballs. If you think about the top of the funnel and then all the way down through like the conversations and the conversions. So if at any point in that funnel you feel like you just don't have enough notice on you, eyes on you, then it's time to think about a different strategy.
The top of the funnel. Let's talk about that a little bit more, because it's not real. It is black and white getting business. It's not black and white in the process of getting there. And in my experience, you can see by the color of my hair, I've been around a while, and there is this notion that, well, we need leads, and those that becomes sort of the, well, no shit, of course you do. How do you start getting people out of this sense of desperation? Because that is a reflexive thing. It is a reflexive action of, oh God, and then everything tightens up. And so instead of expanding, it feels like everything is tightening, and that expands out to the rest of the agency. And that vibe of fear permeates throughout the agency. If you're an agency leader, if you're in biz dev and you start feeling it clenching up a bit, what do you advise? Because it can be that penultimate of a moment where it's, oh wow, this really is serious. Eric, do you want to start in on that one?
I just want to say one thing and then Eric jump in.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
like
yeah.
that vibe of fear that you're talking about, Zanger, that permeates to your prospective clients. They feel it too. Like if you guys, any of you follow Arlen Hamilton, who wrote Your First Million, she has a saying about stay hungry, not thirsty. People can sense when you're thirsty, and your immediate need for revenue is not your prospective client's problem. Their business problem is their problem that they want to know if you can solve. So you being desperate for revenue is really not their problem. So Eric, jump in. But we hear that, we talk a lot about like how it feels as your prospective client to be approached by an agency that sort of reeks of that kind of desperation for revenue.
Right.
Yeah, totally. And Zanger, to back up even from where you asked of like top of the funnel, honestly, man, it's leadership taking a hard look at themselves and their understanding of sales cycles and what does that mean for their agency. Because to the point of like, we want leads, there's a lot of agencies that don't know what to do with the leads, or they're the wrong leads. And we see one of the things that we solve for so often is agencies doing tactical things that are the wrong things. It's causing frustration. Their people aren't good at it. Their people don't want to do it. They're knocking on the wrong doors. So when they do get leads, there's a very low chance of converting. That's that's pushing boulders uphill, man. And the reality for us is new business can be exciting and exhilarating and enjoyable. And when you're doing the wrong things, it's just a drag. And it to Nora's point, that also permeates to everybody. It's like, oh, hey, everybody's got to write a blog once a week. Nobody likes the blog. Nobody writes the blog. New business never happens because that was the wrong thing for the agency. And I think agency owners just have to really understand the strategy behind how to drive growth. What's their number? Nora can tell you where this quote came from, but what do you want to accomplish and by when? Like, we've got to know that, and then we reverse engineer it from there. And then there's a lot of different things that we can do to impact the top of the funnel. But it should really align with the authenticity of your agency and your people and your expertise, and something like you'll get up for every day. It's like, for example, like you doing this podcast, like you doing all the things that seem authentic to you. Yeah, it's like it's work, but it probably doesn't feel like a grind every day. And so there's a lot of different places that we can show up, like going to conferences. For some people, they love that. Like, they thrive on that, meeting new people, having conversations. For other people, that might not be as authentic or as natural for them. So maybe for them, something along the lines of like thought leadership or, doing something more one-on-one makes sense. So the point is there's a lot of different things that we can do, but we don't want to be generating leads just for the sake of it, because what also happens, a conversation we have a lot of times, is like when we dig into it, conversion rates are like 1 of 7, 1 of 8, 1 of 10. And man, how much money these agencies are spending when they're getting into these pitches, conversations, and they're not converting. That's another thing that will really demoralize an entire team.
Right. Before we move over to you, Nora, is that your real background, Eric?
Yeah, it is.
You actually own a globe?
Yeah, I do. I do a little thing with my daughter called Around the World with My Girl. And so we'll come in and we'll point to a place and we'll spin the globe, and we also show where her friends are and that sort of thing. So, trying to keep her analog.
You're there,
Yeah.
You guys get around.
Okay. All right. I was just checking.
Yeah.
I just don't see many globes nowadays.
Yeah. You don't.
I mean, it's very 70s, 80s. Do you have like nautical stuff in there too? Maybe?
No nautical stuff. These are my wedding vows, though.
Okay. All right.
My wife printed those out.
Yeah. You'd mentioned some of the wrong tactical things, and you got into specifics. Nora, what are some, if we're bullet listing out wrong tactical things to do, what are they and why?
So there, in the same way that there's no silver bullet, magic bullet tactic that everyone should do, there's no wrong tactic that everyone shouldn't do. What it really comes down to is what Eric was speaking to earlier, which is, what do you like to do? What's authentic to you? What does your team like to do? What does your team hate to do? The point about blogging, I used to have agency owners come over to my desk when I was the head of growth and say, I think we're going to blog now. Can you get everyone in the blog? And then I would go walk around like on the day the blog was due, and
pulling freaking teeth.
People would see me coming across the open office, make eye contact, and literally run away. Like, not today, Satan. Like, I'm not writing this blog. Like, I have other things to do. And also, I don't like to write, So if people, don't make people smash their head against a brick wall. If 80% of your staff hates to write, don't make them blog. If you're petrified to be on stage, don't try to get a TED Talk. If you, don't like talking to people and you're more introverted, don't do a podcast or a video, because what ends up happening is like, you look uncomfortable. You look like you don't know what you're doing. It actually makes your agency look worse than you are. Whereas if you lean into a tactic where you feel very comfortable, where you can share your expertise confidently, I think confidence is the key word here, then you're good. If you're not confident in the medium or in the message, people are going to smell it, and you're not going to get any traction off of that.
Right. Question from another indie agency news member, the People's Champion, Shannon Jones from Verb.
Hey, Shannon.
I cannot wait for them to do Meet an Indie Agency. I love them. This is a great question. Would love to hear your take on the impact of agency awards on driving new business. So there's that piece of it, but also some of the other things. And to me, this does feel top of funnel, mid funnel, depending on which market, what flavor of marketer you're talking to. I've mentioned that some really vibe on the creative stuff, which I think is a huge plus for an agency, especially a creative agency. But let's talk about the impact of awards first, the recognition, and let's take it one step further and just call it recognition, awards being part of that. Who wants to tackle that potato?
I'll jump in with a top level thought, and I think it comes back to resources. If you're a small agency, and because we know the reality is a lot of these are pay to play. There's great, authentic, recognition awards that are not necessarily pay to play, but at all levels, there's going to be an entry fee. So kind of understand from a resource standpoint, like what is your budget around this? Like what can you go out after? What can you win? The bottom level of it is, we always want to be easy to choose and hard to dismiss. I think the analogy I use oftentimes is like, it would be looking for, let's call it a microphone on Amazon. You put in podcast mic on Amazon, whether there's gonna be thousands. So now you start to kind of go through and you start to add these other criteria of like, how do I narrow in to get to exactly what I'm looking for? And if one of your prospects wants to see that you're awarded by your peers or your industry, then that's another box that they can check. Is it going to be the thing that is going to put you ahead of everyone else all the time? Probably not. But if those are things that you can go out and you can authentically do, and it fits in within your resources and your overall strategy, then absolutely, let's like put some awards on there. There's a right time and place to be able to do some communications around that, and it can be a starting point for conversations. It's a great place to it's a great time and place to show up at those awards, those conferences, and so forth. And so we totally endorse it. There's a lot of people that will knock on it because they say it's only pay to play. It's kind of price of admission, man. It's just like, it's kind of part of the way things work.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, like, let's be honest here. I mean, this thing is a membership model, right? It's not necessarily pay to play, but we're doing, it's very clear what we're trying to do here. And, I do think that there's value in that. And I'm just not saying that because I'm trying to grow a business, but, and to your point earlier, Eric, yeah, I do. This is fun, but I also feel like it's meaningful, right? So,
Totally.
so that comes across. So Damon, God, see, look at, I'm so old. Damon Pastulka. I can't see your comment in here. If you want to try again, just put your comment in here.
I'll see if I can find it on LinkedIn.
Yeah, so something went a little hinky. Rough enough working on snagging new business, but what if you and your agency start seeing action and that's where it ends. Hold on.
Oh, let me see if I can find it.
I know.
While y'all look for that, Zanger, one of the points I want to make kind of before even all of this is, I think agencies also just have to come to terms with, what do you want to accomplish with your agency? I mean, do you want to consistently be in this mindset of like fear and tumultuousy of like, if a client leaves or we have another global or domestic or financial situation, right. The reality is most agency owners didn't hang up a shingle to think about the pipeline every day, but it's an imperative part of a healthy organization. And you've just got to take ownership that you've got to be doing. There's some foundational stuff that every agency needs to be doing.
And I'll say too, that we see a lot that founders are still working in the business versus on the business. And I think a lot of times that's because by design, right? Like you were at a bigger agency, so you're working for someone else, or you were at a holding company and you wanted to break free and go indie. Awesome. And you probably left because you're a creative, you're a strategist, you're a great, media planner buyer. Like you had some skill from the agency world that you wanted to take to new and different clients and do it your way. Eric and I and Zanger included in that, right? So we all take our skills and we want to use those skills. But what that means is you're working in the business, you're working with the clients. When you're so tied up doing that and you're kind of at the whim of, their planning cycles, their campaign cycles, like if you're not dedicating enough time to work on your business and promoting it, expanding your network, expanding your pipeline, that responsibility resides with the owners and the leaders of the company. So if you are the kind of, agency owner or founder that wants to work in the business, then you have to get someone that wants to work on the business, like a head of business development or growth, or a CMO or a CGO or a freelancer, or someone like Eric and I, whoever. There's lots of growth consultants. So think about it that way too. If what kind of founder are you? Do you not want to work on the business and you want to work in it? Then that's okay. But you got to find someone who's going to work on it for you.
And let me ask you this regarding, say you're a senior leader, you bring on somebody in business development and it's not necessarily working out. And that's a tough conversation to have, right? Because ultimately the responsibility of growing a business falls on everybody. Now, there is the job, but then there is your role in an organization. So a job could be growth, and unfortunately, everyone's role is to grow the business, but unfortunately, that job falls on one person. If you're a leader and you're seeing it not happen, number one, what do you do? Secondly, how do you start assessing realistically what's actually happening? What if it's not the biz dev person? Maybe you've not necessarily set them up to succeed because you don't necessarily want to have somebody's responsible for that piece of it, but it's everyone's responsibility to grow the business. But at the same time, what would you advise an agency leader to do to take a look at the whole thing and not just that one piece and be reactive?
Yeah.
Talk
Eric,
to somebody else.
I want you to jump on this. I just have one thing to say, which is that, look, it's very hard to WebMD yourself. You're not supposed to do that, right? You're supposed to go to a doctor and get a proper diagnosis. You're not supposed to Google your symptoms and expect that you have cancer. Like, you need a professional who has like an outsider's perspective to diagnose you. Like, it is very hard for agencies to diagnose their own growth problems, period. So I recommend you talk to someone that is not your business development person or yourselves as the leaders to try to figure out where you're going wrong.
Right. But I think my point is like, you may want to point the blame on somebody, but at the same time, you got to look at yourself.
Yes.
Totally.
Yes.
Because again, so many agency owners and leadership are creatives or account people. Like, that's not their mindset. And so, it's like, let's use us as an example as entrepreneurs. Zanger, I don't know your background, but, even though I've got a degree in finance, that's not my expertise. And so, like, we've got an accountant, we've got, someone, so we bring in the resources to do that. Oftentimes, like, when that's not your skill set, when you're not familiar with that, we very often see agency owners that have brought in the wrong people because they're not honestly not qualified to, or they just don't have the experience in developing that system. So like, they don't know the one, they don't have a strategy. And so they're just plugging someone in and expecting someone to go execute. They want somebody to do the tactical things. But it's a challenge because we need a strategy. And if you bring someone in to do strategic things, they're oftentimes very senior, have a lot of expertise, and they don't want to do the tactical things. Like, they're not going to be out there hunting most of the time. Like, these are generalizations. What happens more times is you bring somebody in at a lesser salary that's more junior, that is driven, that's hungry, that has some of those hunter characteristics that you like, that you want because that's not you don't have those. But then they don't have a strategy. They're just out there, the wind's blowing them in every direction, and there's not a lot of consistency. And so there's just a lot of disconnect between what you want to accomplish and then what you're putting a person in the position to be able to do.
Yes, that all makes sense. I just stubbed my toe, so that's why I was delayed for a second.
That's impressive.
You really held that together. Good job.
I was like this. Yeah.
If you had just cussed in the middle of me talking, that probably would have like created some, a sense of urgency around whatever it was I had said.
Yes, Eric. Yes.
Eric, this is a family show, motherfucker. Okay, so going back to the topic, right? So we put a lot of context into this. Let's go to the question. And again, if you are watching this live and you'd like to fork over a question, thank you again to Shannon for popping that over. If you have another question, just pop it in and we'll see if we can get it in before we wrap up here in a few minutes. But let's go back to this question. What happens when the network runs dry? Let's get to a practical guide to that. What are some of the things to think about? Knowing that we've put some context around this, let's answer that question. What happens when the network runs dry?
Well, when it runs dry, you have to expand the network, you know, like the whole concept of fishing where the fish are. If you've overfished the one pond, you got to move to another pond. You got to go find new and different and better, but you got to strategically think about where your fish are. And a lot of that will inform what you do from a tactics perspective. Like, are your fish at a conference? You better show up at that conference. Are they in this, you know, Slack channel with 10,000 people? You better sign up for that Slack channel. So like, I think introspection on like, where are your fish is a good place to start when you want to expand your network.
All right. Eric?
One of the first things that for most of our clients that we recommend is strategic partnerships. So find those places, those other entities that you can collaborate with, where you can feed each other opportunities. And these, like let's be direct about it. Like these are ways that you can drive revenue for each other. This isn't just a way to spend your time because it makes you feel like you're doing something, but what is the adjacency to you? One of the exercises that we do often is this is what we do, this is what we don't do. Seems very basic, but as we all know, right, a lot of agencies have a whole list of things on their site that they don't really do. So let's find the agencies or the partners that actually do those things. And so we can bring business each other's way, because we talked about before, there is no one silver bullet. There isn't a silver bullet, but that is typically a pretty quick path.
Right. And that's why purposefully, when we do meet an indie agency, we actually ask that very specifically. We ask what you're best known for and your top 3 strengths, because that helps narrow it down a little bit. Because you're right, there are a lot of laundry lists. We got Rick Williams. Made a lot of headway with larger brands who are excited about working with us, but sidelined by AOR relationships. Any creative ways to work around these to still get our foot in the door? Smaller initiatives operating as a consultant. I can't talk today. It's very allergy-ish today out here in Oregon.
Yes.
But there's the question. This is
a great question. And I have a thought on this. So this used to happen at my agencies that I worked for, because I've always worked for smaller indies. And so there's a couple ways you can go at this. One is to ask that client, what things does your AOR not want to work on, cannot get to? Like basically it's fallen to the C or the F team.
Yeah. Lead with their need first.
Yeah, like what is not getting done by your AOR? Because inevitably there is something the AOR is not
caps.
The loyalty program. They're just kind of ignoring the loyalty program. Yeah, like the shopper, the end cap, this activation, this thing, how they can't find enough influencers or the right influencers. Like try to carve off a project and be like, no commitment, no contractual commitment, just give us a project. Or if you're in like a bigger organization, like whether it's CPG or something else that has like a lot of brands, right? Like sort of a portfolio brand company, be like, give us your most broken brand. Like what's the brand that like is in the biggest trouble spot right now, or that's getting ignored, or that has no budget? Like P&G is an interesting one, because like they've acquired up a bunch of brands, but if you talk to anybody there, they're like, well, this one has 2 nickels to rub together. You're like, great, give me the 2 nickels one. So if you have any of those introductory relationships and people are like, oh, I'm just like tied up with the AOR, don't go after the AOR business. Go after the scraps. Like just to be humble about it. Just be like, tell us where you have some deficiencies or where you have some needs. We'll take you up on that for a project.
You can take a remnant rug and stitch it into something very beautiful.
Yep.
I don't know. That's a weird analogy.
That's a great question, though. That was a super great question. Thanks. Really, it was Rick, right? Rick, great question.
Yes. Let's see. We got one more here. We talked about this a little bit. Ryan brought this up. We have talked about this a little bit. Speaking gigs, the value driven. So here's my thought on it. Is there's value in it, but I consult around strategic narrative and visibility. And is it the right thing? Do you actually have a point of view? Are you just using AI? And by the way, I can figure out when you're using AI, by the way. Yep. I scan AI. I've been pitched some things like op-eds, and then I ran it through the machine, and it was a good chunk AI. And I was just like, yeah, that doesn't fly. That doesn't fly.
I'll say
let's go back to the question, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Thank-
to your point. Yeah, to your point, Zanger, though, it totally depends on your agency's strategy. So, we always talk about there are three parts of the funnel, and we've got to address each of those. And sometimes certain agencies are naturally better at one part or the other. But we've got to be addressing all of them. Like it's a machine, like we can't just say, oh, this is our favorite thing to do, so we're only going to get a ton of eyeballs, but then we're not going to move them through the funnel and we're not going to convert them. Like that doesn't work. So we need to have an overarching strategy, and then like that strategy should have tactics, and there should be a tactic aligned with each part of the funnel. And so for your agency, if thought leadership, if conferences, awards, speaking gigs, those are great places to show up. Again, if it aligns with the authenticity of your agency, your expertise, you're comfortable with it. Nora and I are obviously extroverts. Like we enjoy talking to people. It's very natural for us to go to conferences and know how to work a conference. But we oftentimes talk to agency owners that don't know how to work a conference. So you spend $3,000 plus some T&E to go to a conference, just expecting that you're going to get business out of it without a strategy. That's we can see why that's not going to work. So short answer, those are all great tactics, and we totally endorse them if they fit into the overarching strategy that works for that agency.
Shout out to introverts. I'm an INFP-A, an assertive introvert. But I like going to conferences. I like doing stuff. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
But it's easier for you to have conversations with people, even if but you've also got a ton of connections too. So like you're going to probably naturally run in.
Yeah. But part of it's you'd mentioned like background, right? So first act of my career was broadcast. It was radio. So that's what I'm comfortable with. So yeah, I might be a little bit of an introvert, but when the light goes on, it's like, yeah, cool. I'm good. Yeah. It was funny because Griner, when I was at Adweek, he would force me to leave. He's like, I can tell you're staring off into the middle distance. It's time for you to go. It's time for you to just go hang out by yourself for a little while. And he was right. Yeah, it is kind of counterintuitive. The A means assertive though. So it's got a little bit of schmutz on that.
Well, speaking of conferences, if anyone is at Mirren in New York next week, we will be there. So come find us. We can definitely chat more on this subject.
Or if you're going and you want some help or need some help of like, hey, how do I make the most out of this? Nora and I have both been a ton of times, so we'd be happy to hit us, either of us, up on LinkedIn. We'd be happy to help you make the most of it.
Yeah. So let's do that. And then I want to put this question up. It's not for this conversation now, but here's Tony. He was creative at Target for 10 years, been directing for 10 years. So Tony, reach out to me on LinkedIn and let's talk about this, because maybe we can do a show on this, because we're running out of time because the music is there now. Plus
Nora and I both have a ton of, we've got a ton of contacts in this space too. So go to Zanger, and then if like there's anything that Nora and I can do to help, we'd love to.
Tony and I are chit-chatting in the DMs already. So yes.
No, but I think it's an interesting conversation to talk about perceptions of job versus role, right? So there's a certain segment of people in this industry that know me as the radio guy, and they still know me as the radio guy, and that's what they think I'm doing, which is fine to a point, but I think it's worth talking about. Tony, get in touch with us. Also, here you go, broadcast segue. Thank you, Tony. And to those of you who have an interesting thought about this, just go to indieagency.news. Again, thank you so much to all of our members, all of our supporters, Nora and Eric. I can't thank you enough for being early supporters of this. And we're building something special, and you guys are a big part of it. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, man. Thanks for having us.
All right. Hang out backstage for me. And again, thank you to everybody. We are numbering 85 members, Indie Agency News. Go to indieagency.news. Also, we are proud sponsors. I don't know how long the sponsorship actually runs. Under the Influence, the show by Terry O'Reilly up in Toronto, legendary figure in advertising over the years. Get a chance to check out his show. You can listen to it on Acast. We are proud supporters of that. Under the Influence by Terry O'Reilly. Tomorrow, again, meet an indie agency, Movetic out of San Diego. And then we're talking to Drake Cooper about a great project that they're doing for the for the Treefort Music Festival in Boise, and then Friday, random question. I'm Doug Zanger on behalf of everybody at Indie Agency News. Thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.